What if a single moment could change everything? Picture this: a 10-year-old boy, ignored and underestimated by a racist woman, is going about his day. But when she encounters danger, only this child has the power to save her. She stumbles and finds herself in a predicament where she cannot move without help, and the boy is her only hope. What happens next will leave you in shock. Stay tuned, as this boy's actions change everything and force everyone to reconsider their biases. It is a typical afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The sun gleams brightly, casting a golden glow on the peaceful street. Birds chirp in the trees, and the faint sounds of children's laughter echo in the background as they play. The neighborhood is calm, like a snapshot of a perfect day, and people move through it, each caught up in their own lives. Some are gardening, others walk their dogs, and a few elderly neighbors wave as they sit outside their homes, enjoying the weather. Among them, a 10-year-old black boy, Malik, walks along the sidewalk with a school bag slung over his shoulder. His stride is casual but steady, a slight smile tugging at his lips as he heads home. He's no different than any other child, just a kid, trying to make his way through the world. His dark hoodie and jeans contrast with the brightness of the sun, and his focus is on the simple task of getting home after a long day of school. Unbeknownst to Malik, a moment is unfolding that will change the course of his life. As he walks past a neat row of houses, his attention is drawn to a figure sitting on a porch a little ahead. An elderly white woman, Ms. Miller, watches him from her rocking chair. She's dressed in an old cardigan and a faded floral dress, her hands resting on the armrests as she surveys the street. Her eyes lock onto Malik, and there's a flicker of disdain in her gaze. She mutters something under her breath, just loud enough for him to hear. "Just another one of them," she grumbles, barely able to hide the contempt in her voice. Malik hears the words, but instead of reacting, he keeps his gaze forward and his pace steady. He has learned to ignore the insults, the racial prejudice that so many people are quick to display. He's been raised in this neighborhood, where whispers and stares from certain people are an unfortunate reality. But today, Malik's resolve will be tested in a way he never imagined. As Malik walks by, the woman's gaze follows him, and she mutters another remark, this time louder. "Don't know why they think they belong around here," she says, her words sharp and cutting. Malik, though young, understands the sting of hatred well. He knows what it feels like to be judged based on the color of his skin rather than the content of his character. He doesn't flinch at her words, keeping his head held high as he continues his walk, ignoring her as she watches him with scorn. For a moment, the world seems to pause. It's as if the air itself thickens with the weight of her judgment. Yet Malik is unbothered, moving forward, taking each step with purpose, aware that these hateful words are just noise. But what happens next will prove that even in a moment of judgment, things can take an unexpected turn. As he moves further down the street, Malik reaches an intersection. The street is busy, but it is mostly quiet, with only a few people going about their business. However, he doesn't notice the car approaching until it is almost too late. A white sedan, speeding down the street, is heading straight for the crosswalk where the woman is still sitting on the porch. Ms. Miller, distracted by her phone, does not see the car coming her way. She is absorbed in whatever is on her screen, completely unaware that she is in danger. The car screeches as the driver slams on the brakes, but it is too close. Ms. Miller does not react fast enough, too caught up in her phone to realize the danger. Malik, who has been walking with his head down, notices just in time. In an instant, he springs into action. Without a second thought, Malik dashes toward the woman, his small body moving with surprising speed. His heart races, but his mind is clear as he grabs her arm, yanking her away from the street just as the car hurtles by. In the seconds that follow, the world seems to slow down. The woman stumbles, caught off guard by the boy's sudden grip, but she is safe. She looks up at Malik, her face a mixture of confusion and surprise. She is shaken, but not harmed thanks to his quick thinking. The driver of the car, having managed to stop just in time, honks his horn in frustration but drives off, the danger having passed. Miss Miller stands there, her heart pounding, realizing how close she came to harm. As Malik stands back, looking at her with a mix of concern and calm, the woman stares at him, speechless for a moment. The tension between them shifts in that instant. Malik has acted without thinking of what others might say or how he might be treated. In that brief exchange, the prejudice she held has been confronted by the kindness of a young boy who simply wanted to help. Malik, the young boy at the center of this story, is no stranger to adversity. At just 10 years old, he has already learned many tough lessons. Raised in a modest neighborhood by a single mother, Malik has always had to be resilient. The neighborhood he calls home is a place where opportunities are limited and challenges often arise. Yet, through all of it, Malik has learned to maintain his sense of kindness and self-respect. Despite the racial prejudice he faces on a daily basis, Malik has never let it define who he is. He understands the biases directed at him, yet he refuses to let them shape his interactions with others. Rather than feeling anger or resentment toward the world, Malik responds with acts of kindness. His mother has instilled in him the importance of doing good, even when no one is watching. Whether it's helping his elderly neighbor carry groceries or standing up for a friend being picked on at school, Malik's kindness is his greatest weapon against the hatred he encounters. Though his efforts often go unnoticed by most, those who see his actions understand the profound impact of his behavior. In a world where people often judge others based on their appearance or background, Malik quietly challenges those norms by showing compassion where it's most needed. His quiet demeanor, coupled with his strong sense of empathy, makes him an invaluable part of his community. He believes deeply in the power of kindness and remains determined to face each day with an open heart, even when the world around him seems closed off to people like him. As Malik walks through his neighborhood, he notices things that many others overlook. The homeless man on the corner who needs a meal, the single mother struggling to keep up with her children, and the elderly woman down the street who is too proud to ask for help. He doesn't need to be asked to help. He just does. His heart tells him what's right, and he follows it without hesitation, even when he knows that not everyone will appreciate or acknowledge his efforts. Miss Miller, the elderly woman who lives on the corner house of Malik's street, has lived in the neighborhood for decades. She's retired now, having spent most of her life in the same house, watching as the world around her changes. Unfortunately, her view of the world is shaped by a narrow perspective, one that is deeply influenced by old-fashioned, outdated, and harmful racial biases. Miss Miller has rarely interacted with people outside her race. Her experiences with people of color have been minimal, and she's only been exposed to a particular narrative of them, often skewed by the media or her own prejudices. As she's grown older, her view of the world has become more insular, and the lines between herself and others have only become sharper. Her mind is closed, and her heart has hardened against anyone she deems different. For reasons she likely cannot explain, Miss Miller feels an inherent discomfort when she sees Malik, a young black boy, walking down her street. She doesn't know him personally, but his presence triggers something deep within her. To her, Malik doesn't belong here. He doesn't fit the image she has of her neighborhood, a place she views as peaceful and homogeneous. Even as Malik walks by her home, minding his own business, she mutters under her breath about the boy, derogatory comments based solely on his race. Despite having no real understanding of Malik's life or his character, Miss Miller judges him based on preconceived notions. She treats him with condescension, watching him as if he's out of place. She sees him not as an individual, but as a symbol of what she perceives to be wrong with society. To her, he is just another child from a troubled background, one she feels superior to in every way. Her disdain is palpable, and her treatment of Malik reflects the systemic racism that has been ingrained in her worldview. Her relationship with Malik is strained, not by any action of his, but by the prejudices she holds. Every time they cross paths, she makes her judgment known. She doesn't speak to him kindly, if she speaks to him at all, and when she does, it's laced with the bitterness of her unearned superiority. She believes she's entitled to treat him however she pleases because of her age, her race, and the fact that she has lived in the neighborhood for so long. Ms. Miller's life has been easy in many ways. She's never had to face the struggles of growing up black in a system designed to make people like Malik feel invisible. She's always had privilege, whether she realized it or not, and she holds on to that privilege fiercely, even if it means treating others poorly. Character that defines a person. This woman, who has never known the true value of empathy and compassion, is about to have her world turned upside down. And the one to show her this lesson? A boy she has dismissed, ignored, and even belittled. In the end, it is the very thing she underestimated, Malik's ability to rise above prejudice, that will change everything. It is a warm afternoon when Ms. Miller, the elderly woman who has spent many years in the same neighborhood, decides to step outside. She feels the need to walk down her driveway to check the mailbox, a simple task she has done countless times before. But today, something feels different. The years have taken a toll on her body, and her legs are no longer as strong as they once were. As she steps off the curb, she hesitates. Her balance falters as she tries to lift her foot to step onto the street. Her frail body struggles to keep steady, and she stumbles, grabbing for support that isn't there. Her hands reach out, but there is no one nearby to help her. The world around her becomes blurry as her legs give out, and she is left stranded in the middle of the street. The weight of age, the fear of being helpless, and the realization that she can no longer rely on her own strength flood over her. For a moment, Ms. Miller freezes, embarrassment washing over her like a wave. She is alone in this vulnerable moment, with no one to turn to, no one to assist her. There's a brief flicker of panic in her chest. She had always prided herself on being independent, on doing everything on her own. But today, she cannot seem to stand on her own. The quiet neighborhood, so peaceful and comfortable just moments ago, suddenly feels isolating and cold. As Miss Miller struggles, something unexpected happens. The boy, the same young black boy she had often looked at with disdain, is walking down the street. His name is Malik, and he's just a few yards away, making his way home from school. Despite the years of judgment she has shown him, he doesn't hesitate. When he notices Miss Miller struggling, his heart immediately leaps into action. Despite how she had treated him, despite the harsh words she had thrown his way in the past, he doesn't stop to think twice. His sense of empathy and kindness guides his steps as he rushes over to her side. Malik sees her loss of balance and, without a second thought, extends his hand to her. His grip is firm yet gentle as he helps her steady herself, his voice soft but calm. "Let me help you, ma'am," he says. Ms. Miller, shocked by his sudden act of kindness, looks up at the boy in front of her. Her eyes widen as she sees him, the same boy she had once thought less of, the one she had never seen as worthy of respect, standing before her, offering his hand without hesitation. At first, Miss Miller hesitates. The pride she has built her life on is hard to let go of, even in this moment of need. But then, as the reality of her situation sinks in, she takes his hand. There is no time to be proud. She is in pain, embarrassed, and vulnerable. She doesn't have the luxury of her usual disdain. As Malik gently helps her back onto the sidewalk, she feels the boy's genuine care. It is not an act of obligation, but of true compassion. His movements are steady, and his voice, despite the unease of the moment, remains calm and reassuring. He doesn't hold her up as if she is a burden, but guides her with quiet dignity. For the first time, Miss Miller sees him not as the other, but as someone like herself, someone who is kind, who cares, and who is offering his help without judgment. The moment is fleeting, but the impact is significant. Miss Miller finds herself standing upright, her balance restored by a boy who, in her mind, had never deserved her time or attention. The anger and bitterness she had held on to for so long begin to melt away, replaced by a quiet humility. For Malik, this is just another act of kindness. Helping others is second nature to him, a part of who he is. But for Miss Miller, this moment marks the beginning of a shift in her perspective. She has seen Malik's true character, something far beyond the stereotypes she once believed. The boy's actions, driven by pure goodness, have made her realize that kindness can break through walls of prejudice and animosity. For the first time, she feels the weight of the biases she has held all these years. Her vision of the boy, once tainted by her assumptions, has changed. She now sees Malik for who he truly is, a person of integrity, a person who is better than the image she had projected onto him. As Malik helps Miss Miller regain her balance, think for a moment. How do you think we can all become better neighbors, helping others even when we've been wronged in the past? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what you think about this moment of kindness. Can one act of bravery and compassion truly change someone's worldview? Let's talk about it. After helping the woman back onto the sidewalk, Malik continues his walk, heading in the direction of his home. The weight of what just happened doesn't fully settle on him, as helping others has always been second nature to him. But just a few moments later, as he continues down the street, he hears a sound that makes him pause, a small, desperate gasp from across the road. Turning around, he sees the woman struggling once again. This time, her body buckles beneath her, and she collapses onto the pavement. The boy's heart races as he watches her fall, his instinct kicking in. Despite having already helped her once, Malik doesn't hesitate to turn back. He knows that she is in danger and that he cannot just walk away. As he hurries back towards her, a car drives by, its engine roaring in the quiet street. The woman's neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, notices the scene from her front porch. She quickly rushes over, her concern evident as she reaches the woman's side, calling out to the boy and others nearby to summon help. But Malik, undeterred by the growing crowd, doesn't wait for the ambulance. He steps in immediately, lifting the woman as best as he can, guiding her toward a safer spot out of the way of the traffic. Bystanders watch the scene unfold in disbelief. They are used to seeing Malik walking past their houses, minding his own business. But today, he is doing something they never expected. This child, who had been dismissed and looked down upon, was now the one helping, the one saving a life. There is something remarkable in how he handles the situation. His calmness, his quick thinking, and his refusal to let someone else suffer all stand in sharp contrast to the way they had previously seen him. Unimportant, unnoticed. As Malik helps the woman, she looks up at him with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Her eyes, once clouded with prejudice, are now filled with a profound sense of appreciation. She never imagined that the boy she had once ignored, judged, and underestimated would be the one to show such courage and kindness. The woman's neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, calls for the ambulance, but the real transformation is happening right in front of everyone. Malik, without expecting anything in return, assists the woman until help arrives. When the ambulance finally pulls up, the paramedics quickly assess her condition. But Malik stays by her side, offering his support until they take her to safety. The crowd begins to disperse, but the silence that lingers in the air is heavy with realization. Those who have witnessed Malik's act of kindness are left questioning their previous assumptions about him. His actions, so pure and selfless, stand in stark contrast to the biases they may have held. The woman, as she is helped into the ambulance, looks up at Malik with a changed expression. There is no longer disdain in her eyes, no longer the dismissiveness that had once clouded her judgment. Instead, she sees the boy before her as a person of integrity. She sees someone who acted when others stood by, someone who did what was right without hesitation, regardless of who he was or what she thought of him. As the ambulance doors close, she turns to Mrs. Jenkins, and with a voice that cracks slightly, she says, "I was wrong." The woman looks at Malik one more time, her face softening, and she calls out to him, "Thank you. You saved me. I never realized. I was wrong about you, and I will change. I promise." The words are simple, but they hold weight. In this moment, the woman recognizes the power of her own prejudice and how it has clouded her ability to see the good in others. She realizes that the boy she once looked down on had been the one to save her, not out of obligation, but because of his character and the kindness that defines him. Malik nods at her, offering a quiet smile, but he does not say anything. He does not need to. His actions have already spoken louder than words ever could. As the crowd continues to disperse, the woman stands at the intersection of realization and change, having been forced to confront her own biases. The boy, who was once just a figure of disdain in her eyes, is now the one who has shown her the true meaning of humanity. As she watches Malik disappear into the distance, she takes a deep breath, knowing that she will never look at the world or the people in it the same way again. After helping the woman, the boy continues on his way, his mind still processing the unexpected turn of events. He walks a few steps ahead, but soon hears a sound behind him, a faint cry for help. His heart races as he turns around. The woman, now trying to walk again, stumbles once more, this time much harder than before. She falls to the ground, her knees buckling beneath her, and she winces in pain. The boy quickly notices the situation from a distance and, without hesitation, races back to her side. This time, he is more determined, but the gravity of the moment is not lost on him. He reaches her, just as a car drives past and slows down. The driver, who happens to be the woman's neighbor and a well-known figure in the neighborhood, spots the scene and jumps out of his vehicle. He hurries over to assist, his face full of concern. "Call an ambulance!" the neighbor exclaims, clearly alarmed. The boy hears the urgency in his voice, but does not wait for the ambulance. He knows the woman cannot wait for medical help to arrive before being moved to safety. Without thinking about his own safety, he steps in and gently lifts her up, helping her sit down on the curb. "Don't worry," the boy reassures her. "I've got you." Despite the urgency, the woman feels an unexpected calmness wash over her as she gazes up at the boy. The boy, who once seemed so small in her eyes, is now showing an incredible amount of care, responsibility, and maturity far beyond his years. The neighborhood onlookers, who had been passively watching from the distance, begin to approach slowly. They are stunned by the boy's actions, his willingness to help a woman who had once treated him with disdain. As the woman sits, gathering her thoughts, she looks at the boy with newfound respect. She realizes how her prejudices have blinded her from seeing the truth. She had always dismissed him as just another child, one from a background she did not understand, someone she did not feel the need to engage with. But now, she sees his kindness and strength in a completely new light. The once stubborn walls of her bias are beginning to crumble. The boy continues to offer comfort, his calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the hectic situation. The bystanders watch, their faces softening, understanding that kindness and compassion have nothing to do with a person's background or race. It's in moments like these that true character is revealed. The woman, once reluctant to accept the boy's help, now sees the boy as an embodiment of the change she had never thought possible. She looks him in the eye, a mix of gratitude and shame on her face. "Thank you," she says quietly, her voice cracking as she struggles to find the right words. "You saved me." For the first time, she admits to herself the mistake she made in judging him. The very person she had once looked down on has now shown her the true meaning of compassion. Her heart softens, and the weight of her bias begins to dissolve. "I'm sorry for what I said to you before. I was wrong," she says, her voice sincere. The boy, without a hint of anger or bitterness, simply nods, acknowledging her apology. He has always been a believer in second chances, in redemption, and he sees the sincerity in her words. As the woman's neighbor calls for the ambulance, more people begin to gather around, many of them shaking their heads in disbelief. The boy's actions have made a lasting impression. He has not only helped the woman in her time of need, but has also challenged the biases that have been ingrained into people for years. The bystanders watch as the woman, now with a deep sense of humility, thanks the boy once more. With the ambulance on its way and the woman's immediate safety secured, the boy steps back, feeling the weight of the moment. Though the incident is small in the grand scheme of things, its impact on those around him is undeniable. The boy's character, which had been misunderstood, has now taken center stage. It's clear to everyone watching that kindness knows no boundaries. And for the woman, this moment of vulnerability has opened her eyes to the truth. It is not race, background, or appearances that define a person, but the actions they take and the compassion they show. She promises herself that she will no longer allow her biases to govern her perspective, knowing that the boy's actions have taught her the most valuable lesson she will ever learn. The boy continues on his path, carrying with him the weight of his actions. He has done more than just help an elderly woman. He has planted the seeds for a broader change in the neighborhood. People who once passed him by with indifference now look at him with respect, recognizing the quiet power of his kindness. The woman, once so quick to judge him, has been transformed by his selfless actions. The neighborhood, too, begins to shift. Slowly, the walls of prejudice begin to crumble, and the community starts to take a new direction. People who once kept to their own corners of the neighborhood now engage more openly, sharing smiles and friendly greetings. They begin to understand that kindness knows no race, no age, no gender. It is a universal language that can bring people together. The woman, no longer the person she once was, steps out of her home with a new outlook on life. She has come to appreciate the young boy for his character, not his skin color. She now knows that the true measure of a person is not in how others perceive them, but in the actions they take when no one is looking. She walks alongside the boy, and they share a quiet moment of understanding. She has become an advocate for unity, learning from the boy's example and sharing the story of how he changed her life. The boy smiles, a soft, contented smile, knowing that he has done something more significant than he ever imagined. The kindness he showed that day has sparked a ripple effect in the community, encouraging others to embrace empathy and compassion. It is a simple yet powerful reminder that even the smallest act can have the most profound impact. As they walk down the street together, the once divided neighborhood is now filled with hope, respect, and a shared sense of purpose. The boy and the woman, despite their differences, are united by a new understanding. They have learned in their own ways that kindness is not just a feeling, but a force that can change the world. Kindness has the power to break down walls, heal old wounds, and unite us all. This young boy showed us that the smallest act of bravery can change hearts forever.